The haunting recollection of the ill-fated camping expedition with my companion, Hal, continues to grip me, vividly etched in my mind, as if it transpired only yesterday. Hal, an ardent admirer of nature and an accomplished Eagle Scout, frequently embarked on solitary camping journeys, immersing himself in the wilderness to reconnect with the unrefined essence of the outdoors. Intrigued by his fervor, I couldn't resist the chance to join him on one of his escapades. On a beautiful weekend, Hal's girlfriend, Maya, was slated to accompany him on a camping venture. To my surprise, I received a last-minute invitation to accompany them. Filled with excitement mixed with apprehension, I consented, and soon we found ourselves carpooling to an undisclosed location Hal had specially selected for this particular odyssey. Hal was unwavering in his determination to avoid common campgrounds, convinced that genuine camping experiences could only be unearthed in the secluded heart of nature, far from the hustle and bustle. He guided us along a remote dirt trail, concealed within an obscure dead-end road known only to him. With each step further into the woods, the trappings of civilization dwindled into the distance. After a short drive, Hal halted the car at a discreet spot. It took a moment for me to realize that this was our intended destination. Unloading the trunk revealed an array of camping equipment: tents, sleeping bags, provisions, toiletries, and a comprehensive first aid kit. Hal clarified that he had packed more than usual, intending to make this trip a touch more comfortable for Maya and me, despite his preference for minimalist camping. The process of setting up camp commenced with Hal, in his methodical manner, assigning us specific tasks. Given my familiarity with assembling tents, he tasked me with that chore. Maya stayed nearby, aiding in tent assembly and unpacking some of the supplies. Meanwhile, Hal ventured into the woods in search of dry firewood. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Hal returned with an ample load of wood, sufficient to ensure a cozy campfire. We congregated around the crackling flames, sipping drinks and sharing anecdotes from days gone by. Most tales dated back to before Maya joined their circle, but she listened intently, seemingly captivated by their stories. As nightfall enveloped us, the forest's dark canopy created an eerie ambience. Unaccustomed to their customary revelry, Maya chose to retire to her tent, leaving Hal and me to continue our conversation, albeit in hushed tones so as not to disturb her. The tranquility of the night was fleeting as unease soon gripped us. Hal abruptly gestured for silence, urging me to listen. Faint yet undeniable footsteps echoed from the distance, emanating from beyond the reach of our fire's glow. Hal, drawing on his wilderness expertise, posited that it might be a wandering deer nearby. Nevertheless, my mind conjured images of bears or other menacing creatures lurking in the darkness. As we strained our ears, the footsteps persisted, their rhythm growing increasingly disconcerting. Gradually, they melded with a mysterious clicking and growling, unlike any sound produced by an animal I had encountered before. Shadows danced eerily on the tent walls, while my heart pounded relentlessly. Panic set in when I spotted a looming, nightmarish silhouette passing by my tent, sending shivers down my spine. Abruptly, Maya's terrified scream shattered the stillness of the night, propelling us all to our feet. Fear now consumed us, and Hal urgently implored us to abandon the campsite. Without hesitation, we plunged into the darkness, driven by an instinctive need to escape whatever had provoked Maya's distress. Amidst the chaotic scramble, Hal managed to steer us back to the car, a faint glimmer of hope amid the terror. Fueled by adrenaline, we raced through the dark woods, blinded by the absence of flashlights. The unseen pursuer appeared relentless, its footsteps echoing closely as I sprinted. At last, we reached the refuge of the car, and without casting a glance backward, we occupied our respective seats. Hal revved the engine, and with a desperate determination, he maneuvered the car down the same dirt trail we had entered on. Navigating the pickup truck in the dark forest was a nerve-wracking feat, with the constant fear of colliding with a tree. I suggested turning off the headlights to evade detection, but Hal insisted on keeping them on for maneuvering. Through a tense sequence of back-and-forth maneuvers, Hal succeeded in aligning the car correctly, and with a burst of acceleration, we sped away from that nightmarish sight. leaving behind all our camping equipment, which held substantial value, was a sacrifice necessitated by the urgency to escape. Once back on the road, with the distant forest now behind us, we allowed ourselves a moment to catch our breath. The surge of adrenaline gradually ebbed, yet the fear and uncertainty lingered like a persistent specter. The dread proved difficult to shake, and our attempts to rationalize the inexplicable events of that night were futile. Over time, we endeavored to make sense of the experience, seeking logical explanations for the inexplicable. Was it an encounter with an unknown creature, a paranormal presence, or merely our imagination fueled by the isolated darkness? Despite our inquiries, no satisfactory answer emerged. Howe remained steadfast in his assertion that he had never encountered anything resembling that night's events. The baffling clicking, growling, and the imposing biteful shadow defied explanation. Maya's scream we could only attribute to sheer terror of the unknown. Perhaps certain encounters elude rational comprehension, residing forever in the realm of the unexplained. That night, amidst the wilderness, we confronted a terror that seemed to transcend the natural world. Its enigmatic presence continues to remind us that some mysteries lie beyond our grasp. Despite the passage of time, the memory of that inexplicable and horrifying encounter during our camping trip remains indelible, surfacing whenever we delve into the enigmas of the unknown. I'm Elisa, and during the incident I'm about to describe, I was a 16-year-old residing with my mother in a dilapidated apartment in the Bronx, New York. The Bronx was an unsettling place, often filled with shady characters lurking around. Walking alone at night was particularly distressing due to the eerie ambience of the area and our small, unsettling apartment with peculiar neighbors. Our apartment was situated on the 7th floor, second from the end of the hallway. Our next-door neighbor, who occupied the last unit, seemed to have an odd habit of always being present, either outside his door or on the windowsill. His intense gaze was fixated on me whenever I entered the building, even when my mother accompanied me. My mother cautioned me to steer clear of him, although we were unaware of his name. He was an older gentleman of African descent, possibly in his 60s, with only a smattering of gray hair remaining on his head. What made me uneasy was his impassive expression each time his gaze met mine. Then, an unsettling incident occurred that shifted things. Whenever we crossed paths in the hallway, he would greet me using my name, which heightened the eerie atmosphere. I couldn't fathom how he knew my name, but I never dared to inquire. One evening, my mother was on the night shift, leaving me alone at home. Upon returning around 9:00 p.m., the neighbor was, as usual, perched on the windowsill, seemingly devoid of other activities. As I unlocked our door, he inquired whether my mother was working that night. Regrettably, I nodded, and he responded with a slow nod of his own, refraining from further conversation. I entered our apartment and promptly shut the door, eager to distance myself from his presence. Once indoors, I decided to freshen up, have a snack, tend to laundry, and take a shower. Mid-shower, an unusual grumbling sound reached my ears, causing concern though its origin eluded me. Anxious that an intruder might be present, I hurriedly concluded my shower. A similar noise emerged from outside the bathroom, near my bedroom. Hastily dressing, I scoured my room for signs of an unwelcome presence. Instead, I'd observed a minuscule hole in the wall. Upon closer inspection, I realized that it was a conduit, connecting my apartment to the neighbor's unsettling abode. Suddenly, it all clicked, and I comprehended that the noises in the bathroom were likely the result of his drilling, a means to spy on me. Filled with dread, I promptly called my mother to relay the situation. While conversing, aggressive knocks reverberated on our apartment door, and it was the neighbor vociferating for me to admit him. My mother's panic intensified, urging me to contact the authorities as she hastened her return home. Thankfully, the Bronx police responded swiftly, arriving at our door within minutes. Approximately half an hour later, my mother returned. We elected to press charges against the neighbor for stalking, breach of privacy, and vandalism. Subsequently, the apartment management evicted him, necessitating that he foot the bill for repairing the holes he had drilled. In the realm of skepticism, my family and I could undoubtedly lay claim to the title of Supreme Skeptics. We possessed an almost compulsive inclination to inquire, scrutinize, and rationalize every peculiar occurrence that crossed our paths. This quality is what renders the events of that pivotal day so utterly bewildering and perplexing. The tale commences innocuously with a seemingly casual exchange. I recall descending the stairs to the kitchen one afternoon, where my brother was preoccupied with his own affairs. As I reached for a glass of water, a curious notion entered my thoughts. I turned to my brother and directly inquired about his beliefs regarding ghosts. He paused, his expression contemplative, and then gently shook his head in negation. Nevertheless, his response was not complete. With a trace of hesitation, he commenced narrating an unusual tale, one that bordered on the supernatural. His account piqued my curiosity, and I was unable to resist delving deeper. With a hint of apprehension, I questioned him about whether he had ever attempted to startle me upon my return from school. I had my own eerie story to share, which I intended to recount after his response. My brother's reply seemed sincere, as he described playfully shooting a Nerf gun bullet at me while I was engrossed in front of the computer. Although the recollection did trigger a faint memory, he remained unaware that what transpired during my 7th grade year eclipsed that harmless prank by far. Gathering my courage, I opted to relate the perplexing incident from my 7th grade days. It was the inception of a new school term, and I returned home one evening to an empty house. Both my parents were toiling late, and my brother was out with friends. Being naturally cautious, I had developed a habit of maintaining an unusually quiet demeanor when alone at home. My rationale was that minimizing noise would reduce the odds of an intruder detecting my presence. Little did I realize that my instincts might be keener than I had ever imagined. I proceeded to the bathroom, blissfully unaware of the eerie sequence of events that would soon transpire. Just as I was about to flush the toilet, a resounding thud reverberated from my brother's room, leading me to believe that he was preparing to leave. As the sound lingered, I continued to wash my hands, yet the house plunged into an eerie stillness. It was as if the very air had congealed, while an unsettling intuition gnawed at me, an impression akin to being observed or intensely listened to. Despite my initial inclination to dismiss these feelings as mere paranoia, I couldn't shake the uncanny sense that something was amiss. Bereft of a means to contact my brother, having left my phone elsewhere, and the noisy landline phone being impractical, I strained my ears to catch any irregular sounds. Astonishingly, I detected voices, unfamiliar ones. They did not belong to my brother, nor could they be attributed to my father. Instead, a deep, subdued murmuring sent shivers cascading down my spine, as if the speaker deliberately obscured their voice, rendering the words unintelligible. Abruptly, an ominous pounding commenced, gradually amplifying and approaching, seemingly originating from my brother's room and advancing directly toward the bathroom door. Fear surged through me, prompting me to distance myself from the door. I positioned myself near the window, contemplating an escape route if necessary. My youth and physical vulnerability made any notion of confrontation unthinkable. My sole focus was finding a way to evade. The pounding ceased abruptly, right outside the bathroom door, rendering me motionless with trepidation. In a desperate bid to conceal my presence, I covered my mouth, suppressing any sounds that might betray my location. The seconds dragged on agonizingly as I remained in silence, hoping the intruder would eventually depart. The enigmatic intruder appeared to descend the stairs, accompanied by sounds of movement and crashes on the landing and at the base. The murmuring ceased, and shortly thereafter, the door opened and closed, triggering the alarm system. My thoughts raced, attempting to gauge the extent of the peril, yet uncertainty clouded my judgment. As I stood by the door, clutching the doorknob, a nerve-wracking noise erupted from the nearby small laundry chute door. It was a horrifying, persistent pounding, as though someone was attempting to force their way through with a broom or similar object. Helpless and paralyzed with terror, I could only watch as the pounding reverberated through the laundry chute door, praying it wouldn't yield. Time stretched infinitely, and I remained frozen in a state of awe and fear. Finally, the pounding subsided, leaving me alone with my anxiety, confined to the bathroom as if it were a sanctuary. I waited in that confined space for what felt like an eternity, my mind awash with unanswered queries. Eventually, I summoned the courage to contact my parents, but they did not answer. Anxiously awaiting their return, I decided to barricade my door, despite lacking a proper lock to prevent intrusion. When my parents finally arrived home, I recounted the nightmarish ordeal I had endured. Much to my chagrin, they did not believe me. Even my own brother, upon hearing my account, harbored skepticism. However, as I shared the tale of my inexplicable encounter, I noticed a change in my brother's demeanor. He seemed startled, and his eyes betrayed genuine shock. It was then that he recounted his own disconcerting experiences, instances of hearing strange noises from the attic that had once connected to his bedroom. The revelation that he too had encountered unexplainable events left us both confounded, driven to seek answers. To this day, the memory of that harrowing experience remains indelibly etched in my mind. Despite my unyielding pursuit of explanations and rational elucidations, the enigma persists, leaving me with a profound sense of unease and fascination. What did I encounter on that day? Who or what was responsible for those inexplicable and chilling occurrences? The truth perhaps eludes me forever, leaving me grappling with the enigmatic unknown.